Hey guys, this is Richard with Atomic Fab, and today I want to show you what I've been working on for the past couple years actually. Haven't posted anything about it online anywhere except for recently, but this is the first time I'm really showing what I've been working on. So you'll have to excuse the mess. I'm in the middle of moving. So here's the work truck, right? The one that had the ladder on it a few years ago. Still have the ladder. It just wouldn't fit in the garage, so I had to take it off and forgot to put it back on. But, so this truck has been around the block. I've had a lot of different setups on it. It's 4-wheel drive. Got slicks on all four right now. But originally, when I first had it dialed in, it was a forged 402 with a Borg-Warner 82 millimeter. Best time with that was roughly low 6, like a 605 at 115 or so, made somewhere between 1,000 to 1,100 to the wheel. And that was fun, but I got kind of bored with it, to be honest, because that setup was maxed out, and I'm more of a tinkerer than a racer. So I decided to trade the 82 for a 2.3 Whipple. And so the Whipple was fun. Made roughly 650 on boost with the pulley combination I had, which was a custom blower pulley, 8-rib conversion that I made a lot of parts for. Same engine, just changed the cam to a 230, 250 something on a 117. It did pretty well. So I added nitrous to it, made a spacer bar that went under the supercharger between the manifolds. Had it set up for alcohol to use as the nitrous fuel. Hit it with about a 200 shot or so, and it ran I think high 6s at 107, 108, something like that. Made it a little bit heavier, so it was around 5,100, 5,200. So I made about 850 to the ground. But so fast forward, and I always wanted to try something different. So that brings us to what we have now, which is this. So I always wanted to try a compound setup. So here we are, still the same 2.3 Whipple, 8-rib pulley that I designed. I have a couple of different sizes that I'm working with. Twin S475s, 3.5-inch downpipes, T4s. I did all the fabrication work except for the headers. I just bought those on eBay because they're $200, and why not? If they break, I'll just replace them. So I can kind of start from the corner, I guess. So the cooling systems for it are completely separate between the supercharger and the turbos. Blower, I ported the inlets, or the inlet to the intercoolers. So you can get a better picture. Those are -12 fittings, bigger than the normal -10 that they use. Drilled out the intercooler fittings and just make it a little bit bigger, hopefully get some more flow. All of the lines are silicone lines. Not that it matters, but it looks cool, I guess. 1 gallon tank that I made back here. And this, it's hard to see because of the light, but this is a heat exchanger just for the supercharger. Again, 3/4 inch silicone line all the way through. This tank is about a 3-gallon one that I made. These are the return fittings, and can't really see it, but I actually have 3 water pumps for everything. No, you definitely can't see it. Nope. But so 3 water pumps, 2 for the turbos, 1 for the supercharger. They're the normal Bosch whatever pumps. Super cheap, super reliable, low power draw. So why not? 2 of them moves a really good amount of water through here. So the caps are big enough that I could take them off and put some ice in it if I really wanted to, which I might try at some point, because as I found, this setup gets really hot, which is not really surprising given what all I have crammed under here. So this is roughly 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound box for sure. Air to water intercoolers. I don't know if you can see it, but each turbo has its own intercooler mounted directly underneath it. They're the ones off CX Racing, I think. I'm not sure what they're rated for, but it's what I could fit, so it's what I got. Custom radiator by PRC. It's basically the size of a stock radiator, just turned sideways. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the bumper. Can't really see it, but custom radiator. Had them make me a custom heat exchanger also for the turbos, which is the same size as the radiator. Goes all the way down again. Single spall fan on the back, which is the biggest one they make, and it actually works pretty well. Keeps the engine pretty cool. You know, sitting in, driving around, getting on it, keeps it okay. Well, I was kind of worried about that, but he seems to be doing all right. This was the most difficult part of it. Was the 99 to 02 trucks have the least amount of room up front. So as you can see, I made this whole bar that goes across, replace the factory radiator cross member, and so have everything mounted to it. And actually I can pull the entire front end off the truck just by unbolting it here, and there's 2 bolts on either side on the bottom holding it in. But I take those out, I can pull this whole thing up, and I can literally stand right here, you know, between the turbos to work on it, which is really nice. See that light. So at the bottom, you maybe can kind of see, but there's hoses everywhere. So intercooler has 4 fittings. They're all 3/4 MPT or -12. 2 inlets, 2 exits for the heat exchangers. Heat exchanger, they run separately to the intercoolers and return to the tank. The intake pipe is dual 3-inch to a single 4-inch right here. This is a pressure sensor that I installed later, which turned out to be really handy. I'll get to that. Dual 50mm blow-off valves. There's one here, and there's one on the bottom. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of messy. I'll probably build an expansion tank for the radiator just because this doesn't have a whole lot of volume to it. So it's pretty sensitive if you run it pretty hard and maybe start to lift the head a little bit or just get it hot. That's the disadvantage of not having a expansion tank. I'm pretty happy with how this came out. It's actually the second version I did. The first version just wasn't near as clean. Everything is welded except there's 2 silicone couplings on where the intercooler connects to the intake pipe. This is V-banded, which is awesome. See what else we got. The blower setup, like I said, is an 8-rib. This is the factory snout that comes with the 2.3. Apparently they make a different snout that you can use an off-the-shelf pulley with it, but it was like $600 and it was just a lot cheaper and cooler to design my own pulley here. Shout out to Nate at Smooth Flow Pulleys. He's been awesome to work with. I just sent him my drawing for the pulley and he knocks it out in about a week for a very reasonable price. So if you need a pulley, hit him up. Used a lot of Innovators West pulleys that a lot of the Maggie guys use. Their crank pulley, power steering pulley, which sucked. Their idler pulley, and this is actually a Metco 100mm idler, flipped around backwards with a spacer, and the only thing I had to do to make it work, zoom in, was trim the Whipple bracket right here, so it has some room to move. Other than that, you can make an 8-rib for a 2.3 Whipple work pretty well. And yeah, I know the belt skipped a rib. I need to fix that. That's fine. So the only issue I ran into in my original design was the wastegates. Now, compound setups notoriously have a boost creep issue. So my thought was big turbos, big turbines, wastegates right in the flow path should be okay. Well, originally I had the JGS 50mm gates in roughly the same location, and even with them set wide open with the boost controller from the get-go, had crazy boost creep issues. It just wasn't enough. So I upgraded to the Precision 66mm gates, which were the biggest ones I could find, and these things are huge. So there are 2.5 inch inlet here, 2.5 inch dump pipes. They each run outside the frame rails. I don't know if I can get it in here. Yeah, you can see one dump there, and the one on the other side is in roughly the same spot. But 2.5 inch dump pipes on both, straight to atmosphere. Right now there's a 3 psi spring in it, and I use a eBoost Street boost controller with a 4-port solenoid that works really well. Let's see, dual widebands. There's a wideband in each downpipe, one there and one over there. I still have my nitrous stuff hooked up. I don't know if you can really see it, but here there's one of the fittings and there's the other one back there. I had Nitrous Express do the plumbing for me for the spray bars. I was using it with my methanol kit, but I repurposed that to just spray directly in the intake. Still have the nitrous bottle hooked up. Like, here's the line, bottle's still in the truck. Just haven't had a need for it, to be honest. I might hook it up to see what happens, but it's there if I need it. I've jokingly called this build the kitchen sink because it literally has everything on it. So dash 6 feed lines for the turbos. Comes in here, connects to the oil block down below, like most of them. What else we got? So I have a lot of sensors on here just because I like that sort of thing, right? So Egt sensor, yeah, so Egt sensor here, and there's a pressure transducer. You can see the copper line right here, so I can measure turbo drive pressure, which is really interesting. I'll probably get to that in another video or maybe later in this one. Same fuel system I've always been running, 127 pound injectors, dual Walbro 400 pumps, your basic air motive regulator. So I did something interesting with the Whipple rails, because this is originally for like a 2009 truck. So what I did, built a new front crossover that was a little bit slimmer, fit a little bit better than the factory, not the factory, but the Whipple one that came out pretty far. Tried to keep everything out of the plane of the pulley, you know, just in case. But it's a dash 8 feed to the back of the rail to a T fitting, and so the lines are teed on the back and also teed on the front. And so how I made it a returnless setup is I used the factory feed here, and this actually loops around, comes into the regulator. So the return is actually out of the middle of the driver's side rail, and it works great actually. Welded a fitting direct on the valve cover, because why not? What else? Had a buddy of mine powder coat the turbos. Came out really well. He did a much better job than I did. Yeah, so getting all this to fit sucked. I'll just be honest. It took me forever. I'm really happy with how it ended up. It's just a lot of work. But factory grill fits, factory bumper fits. The hood closes fine. I had to go to these little the hood pin deals. It's kind of a bitch to set up, to be honest, but it works really well. These are super solid. There's a big fender washer with a tapered washer so I can get the angle right on here, and there's also another tapered washer on the bottom with a Williams washer welded to it, so I can get that nice and tight, and it keeps the angle, and the hood closes nicely. You can kind of see it here, and there's the top of the hood. So the engine is the same forged LME built 402 that I've been running for years. Let's see, they built it in 2013. I think it's the third engine the pistons have been in, and the fourth engine the rods have been in. New crank, because I have a tendency to break cranks. Dragon Slayer crank. West Coast cylinder head L92 heads that have been milled like 3 or 4 times. Custom Cometic gaskets, the CA 625 head studs. But it's basically the same engine I've been beating on for 5 years now, so you know, it really doesn't owe me anything, and it's a real testament to the guys over at LME. They build a pretty good engine. As far as exhaust goes, 3.5-inch downpipes, which this side sucked to fit, as you can imagine. The came pretty close to the bottom where the brake lines are, just had to space it up a little bit. This clearing the steering shaft was fun. Everything is stainless on the exhaust, TIG welded. I learned a lot working with stainless on this. For the eBay up and forward headers, the only tight spot was right here on the steering column, but a little bit of wrap fixed that pretty easily. I cut the passenger side back so the turbos sit relatively even, which I just took off a little bit right here. What else? Still have the air conditioning stuff. Like there's the dryer back there. I don't know if you can see it, but still have the compressor hooked up. Still installed. Still have all the AC stuff in the dash. So still has AC. So street truck. I don't know. You tell me. Radiator, turbo heat exchanger for the supercharger. Have the 40K transmission cooler right here. Actually have a power steering cooler in there, power steering fluid. Engine oil cooler I put behind the fog light right here. So a lot of coolers. Nice Duracell battery. So I run a 4-wheel drive, right? So it always wants to pick up the front driver's side tire, which is this side. So I made sure to put as much weight up here as I could. So can move to the inside. So I like gauges and don't care what it looks like. I don't know if you can hear the pumps running, but they're moving some air. And you can't really see anything. So a lot of gauges, which I like gauges. So engine oil temp, fuel pressure, manifold boost pressure under the blower, EGT, extra boost gauge I'm not using currently, driver side wideband, passenger side wideband, boost controller, and switches for just about anything you can think of. Methanol controller and cutout switch and nitrous window switch. Not everybody's taste. This is probably more than most people want, but my main goal is to tinker and play around with it, so more the merrier. Still 4-shift 4-wheel drive, works great. A bunch of time slips since the new setup, since I've been running it, and you know, just having fun with it. Took me 2 years to build this thing. Still got heavy ass leather seats, the 10-way power ones. Got subwoofer in the back, amp under the seat. Here's the nitrous bottle, all hooked up. So I didn't finish with the exhaust, but we'll go back to the front. I have about 200 pounds of exhaust shit on it. So can't see it from here, but 3.5-inch downpipes down to a 3.5-inch cutout right under the cab. They're both electric cutouts. After that, it tapers down to 3 inches, combines in the back or in the middle, dual 3-inch into a single 4-inch merge. Then right at the merge, I have a 4-inch boost activated cutout, which is a lot of fun. Then it goes back to a stock 2010 truck muffler with a 4-inch tailpipe. So the stock muffler does a pretty good job of keeping it quiet. It's still got a rumble to it. I mean, big cam, big engine, you're going to hear it, right? But this setup is extremely loud. I was really surprised, and probably because it has 6 points of exit for the exhaust, right? The wastegates definitely know you're there. I mean, 2.5-inch pipes on the wastegates, then 2 3.5-inch downpipe exhaust right under the cab. It's loud. Sounds cool. It's loud. Then, yeah, so I know people are going to say, this is stupid, or it's been done before. Yeah, I know, that's great. I don't care. This is for me to tinker around with and, have some fun. If I want to make more power, the easiest thing will be take the blower off, run the turbos, and, party on. But I'm still using the factory ECU, so I'm limited to about 30 pounds of boost, which right now is about, which is probably my limiting factor right now, because of the way when you compound pressures, they don't just add together, they multiply. So I'm hitting that boost limit pretty quickly. Let's see. So right now, driving impressions, it drives really well. So this thing lights off the turbos pretty dang quick. I was really surprised, actually. Right now I have a 10 psi pulley on the blower, have the wastegate or the turbos running about 10 psi, and I'm hitting about 28 or so psi at the manifold. And at that boost, it traps roughly 105 or so in the eighth, which at this weight is roughly 950 to the ground. So it does okay. I mean, it's fun. I'm going to play with pulley sizes to kind of change it up, and you'll see what happens, because like I said, this is a tinker project. But overall, I'm really happy with it. I've had very few issues since putting it together. I thought now was a good time to share, since I got some runs in, and it's a pretty reliable setup. So yeah, I'll post more pictures of the build process where you can see everything under here, because it's pretty covered up. But yeah, I thought you guys would like to see it. Before anybody asks, 4L80E transmission, 14 bolt, 9.5 inch rear end, built drive shafts front and rear. I actually swapped in a all-wheel drive front diff when I did all this, just because, why not? It's working really well. No complaints so far. But yeah, this is the new setup, and I'll probably rock this for a while, just to, tinker with it. We'll see where it goes. All right, thanks. So I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the other video. I just wanted to add a couple things I didn't think about on the fly. So got the turbos from Jose, and he was saying these together are good for like 1700-ish, but that's obviously too much for this engine. So the obvious thing, right, is the blower is going to be a restriction at some point, and I kind of figured it would be kind of where I am now, around the 950 mark. I was hoping to make 1,000 with the blower, but the fact is the outlet of the supercharger is like this big. Like, it's not big at all. The bypass valve on these things is like the size of a quarter, and it's like half shrouded anyway, so I haven't messed with trying to open the bypass, because I really don't think there would be any point. And so all the air is going through the supercharger. So yeah, that's going to be a restriction, but I still have a couple different size pulleys I want to play with. This right now is like my 10 psi pulley, and like I said before, 10 psi from this, 10 from the turbos gets me roughly 28 or so at the manifold. I want to try, I think I have a 5 or 6 pound pulley I want to try. So I want to do less on the blower or more on the turbos, just kind of see what happens, right? Because at 10 psi these turbos aren't even trying, and it's already up 300 from what the blower is putting out at when the blower is 5 psi higher. So that's the purpose of this, right? It's an interesting challenge, because there's not a whole lot of compound gas setups. Still pump gas. I could do E85. I might need bigger fuel pumps, but if I'm still running up against the boost limit, kind of what's the point? 100% methanol with a shit ton of meth. These are 14 gallon per hour nozzles, I think. I have a second methanol pump I might install, but at that point, why not just go E85 and don't worry about the methanol? So that's something to think about. Um, Tuning wise is really interesting. So I accidentally had the 15 psi pulley on first without realizing it. So that was a lot of cause of consternation with trying to get the boost under control, because this whole thing is a very sensitive setup, right? Because you're getting pressure multiplication through 2 stages of compression. So the turbos are reacting to, the drive pressure generated from the blower also. And so, and the big wastegates, they're good for flowing a lot of air and controlling boost, but they're, slower to react than a smaller gate. So I have logs of it. I'll show probably another video, but the turbo drive pressure swings a little bit slower than you might want. So actually I'll lower the sensitivity of my boost controller, and that worked out pretty well. But you'd get this weird oscillation of like 5 psi up or down, once you were at wide open throttle and it's going through the gears down the track. So it's something to play with. But overall, good experience, interesting setup. So I have to thank my girlfriend for all the awesome videos that she takes. I'm sure most car guys can relate. The track isn't the wife or girlfriend's favorite spot, but she's a trooper. And it's a whole lot of help. Probably gonna say something else, but I forgot. So this thing is really heavy, obviously. I could lose a couple 100 pounds off of it, no problem, just from taking off the exhaust and just doing dumps under the truck or out the sides, and getting rid of the heavy leather 12-way power seats and just going to a normal race seat, 'cause those things probably like 80 pounds a piece. They're ridiculous. So I haven't taken the heads off in years. Literally, like the only thing I changed when I went from the original 82mm turbo setup to the blower was I just changed the cam. Didn't even bother pulling the heads off. But it still works, and I see no reason to mess with it. I might change the cam at some point, because the cam in there right now is has a lot of exhaust duration, which probably doesn't help my boost control issue. But I was kind of curious just to see what would happen, to be honest. So it's like a 230 something, 250 something on the 117. Yeah, that's that's about it. I'm surprised how well it worked. Oh, so the biggest issue I'm having obviously is heat, right? Just after 3 or 4 runs at the track, and granted it was really hot that night, the whole thing just gets hot. Really hot. So the best way I can think to do it would be to have some sort of accessory cart to circulate cold water, either in here, or I could use ice in here, or hook it up to the radiator and do it that way. But like starting IATs or somewhere in like the 130, 140 range, by the end of the 8th mile, spraying a shit ton of meth, they're still 160-ish, 170-ish, which is pretty hot. On a restart, I mean, IATs were, the sensors under the blower, but IATs were in the 170, 180 range, which is pretty ridiculous. So something to think about. But yeah, I'll post some track videos after this, and probably make this one really long video. But I got plenty more content I can add later. So yeah, just want to share with you guys.